All right, I know that I said we were going to do Tommy Knockers this week, but I changed my mind. Instead, we're going to do what is considered by many to be an absolute classic of the science fiction genre. Um, my glasses are crooked. I'll weigh in on whether or not it deserves its classic status. None other than Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land! Land of ice and snow! Trapped inside this prison! Any Iron Maiden fans out there? Word. The song has nothing to do with the book, though. Anyway, first and foremost, it's definitely worth a read. Heinlein wrote a lot of really, really influential pieces. I didn't know the guy wrote Starship Troopers, and apparently the novel is really, really different from the book. But Heinlein is actually right up there as one of the contemporaries of L. Ron Hubbard. So we can actually kind of log those two in together. I think it actually even mentions Heinlein in that little book jacket list of all the cool people L. Ron Hubbard hung out with. Oh my God! Anyway, Heinlein, he's an interesting guy. It's worth actually reading his biography because I kind of gathered this while reading the book. He was a major counterculture figure, definitely influential in the development of the hippie movement, and if you read Stranger in a Strange Land, you'll see why. Brief plot synopsis, and yes, holy moly, there will be spoilers, so warnings to any of you who want to experience Heinlein for the first time. You might want to stop it right now. Stranger in a Strange Land is about the child of a very unfortunately fated expedition to Mars. He was conceived in what seemed to be some type of affair. The entire crew died. He was raised by Martians. Yes, Martians. I didn't know what to think about that at first because, you know, in the modern scientific world, there's no life on Mars. If it is, it's bacterial. But you have to give Heinlein credit. I believe this was first published in the 60s, 1961. So, you know, give him some credit. The Martians have a society that's very different from ours. It's more collectivist, very, very, very much collectivist, but they're also very biologically different from us. They don't have sex. They don't really have much of a concept of property. But the book makes it very clear that they are very highly evolved. They are in control of all their biological functions, even death. They can what they call discorporate at will. They're an interesting race. You never get to really see them directly. You only get like little digested bits that the main character Valentine Michael Smith gives us. It's interesting. I could see life existing in a way like that somewhere in the universe. It's not that far-fetched, but the Martians also have this really cool idea of the old ones. Apparently, they're dead, don't go away, they hang around. And that becomes more and more important in the book. That most people hear Valentine Michael Smith talk, and he describes things, and they just kind of assume that either the Martians are crazy or they're ghosts or whatever. And as you read on and on, you start to realize, whoops, there's a lot of this that's actually really, really true. So Smith comes to Earth. Stranger in a strange land. He stands out like a sore thumb. He acts more like a Martian than a man, and hilarious hijinks ensue. It's hard to get into this book. The first part of it tries to do some very L. Ron Hubbard things with political conspiracies and power wrangling because there's something about how Smith is the heir to a vast fortune. He owns planet Mars or something like that. It's really convoluted and weird, and ultimately that aspect of the plot doesn't really go anywhere. You want to stick with the book till about halfway through. You have to kind of suffer through the first portion. There's a lot that just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's tough. But when you get to that second portion, yeah, it kicks into high gear and it gets really, really good. Although it never really goes in the way of conventional sci-fi. Pew pew, it doesn't do any of that. It stays very philosophical and very intellectual. And I was lucky enough to read Stranger in a Strange Land alongside a philosophical text that I've been very interested in a long time. A gargantuan of intellect, the champion of atheism, one Ludwig Feuerbach. I love his name. The Essence of Christianity. This is quite possibly the most vile, cruel, and pointed criticism of Christianity I've ever read. And I've read Nietzsche. That's saying a lot. Nietzsche was just angry. Feuerbach actually attacks Christianity from a much more intellectual perspective. His idea is that theology is actually anthropology. That what has happened with the world religions is that man has projected the idealized version of himself onto God, meaning the real truth is that man is God. Now, the thing is, if you know anything about Feuerbach, you'll know that he, was getting a lot of ideas from Wilhelm Hegel, and he also influenced Karl Marx quite a bit. So this is a lot of communism, or what I would call proto-communism. I've actually submitted a paper to a conference at Duke University. If anybody is watching from that conference, I would love to come and tell you things about it. Anyway, I don't know if Heinlein was a communist. I don't think he was. He was much more, he was very dynamic in his political theory, but I'm almost 100%. He either knew of Feuerbach or he was drawing from that intellectual tradition. Here's why. The big wisdom that Valentine Michael Smith comes up with in in a Strange Land is that man is God, or life itself is God. And he founds this church. Yeah, it gets crazy. He founds a church that's the Church of the New World. And one of the salutation that they give each other in this church, it's meant to kind of mimic Martian society. And the greeting that they're constantly giving each other is, "Thou art God." So as I was reading this, I was like, wow, there's a lot of Feuerbach in here. The equating of man with God, that the mystery, the ultimate solution to everything is that man is God. So it's actually kind of worth reading Feuerbach because there's a lot of cool stuff that kind of matches together as you read it. So there's a lot of really, really complex philosophy going on here. And I'm actually thinking about doing some research to find out if there's more substance to that. But the other part of this book that gets really, really good is in the first part of it, you meet all these people. I'm not exactly sure, I never really got too terribly attached to them. But halfway through, when he starts building his church, the sex just gets insane. And it's not graphic, but every single character is just having sex with everyone else. And it's because Smith sees sexuality as the thing that separates man from Martian, and it is beautiful, and it is good in its fullness. And one of the gifts that Smith gives the people in the church is that has complete mastery over his biological system. He can control his body in ways that most people can't. He goes into these deep meditations that can last for days. He can heal himself. He helps people get younger just by getting a more healthy mindset. It's pretty strange. But I thought this was really interesting. In very 60s, he liberates the women of the church by allowing them the mental cognition to choose whether they conceive a child or not without the need of contraception. And I was like, wow, that makes things a lot easier, doesn't it? And so you get this whole society in this church is predicated on its social lubrication, haha, is based on open sexuality. And so I'm like, this is kind of Da Vinci Code. It's weird, but at the same time, think about it. If there was like a religious organization that had that wasn't so culty, which unfortunately Smith's religious institution does get culty, it would be very intoxicating, wouldn't it? Especially if it could do things like heal you and make you younger, and you could actually see those things manifesting themselves. It was kind of a fun book to read just to imagine what this kind of society would be like and how exciting it would be to discover something like that actually worked, that actually had substance to it. So it's interesting in the perspective with Feuerbach, because Feuerbach assumes that all this spirituality is, it's kind of hocus pocus, there's no real substance to it. Heinlein comes and he kind of makes it to where man is God, but there's still magic involved with that kind of odd Martian overlay. And Smith is actually a really cool character, unlike Battlefield Earth, where we had a Johnny Goodboy Tyler, and he was just so awesome at everything. Smith, I like Smith, and it's cool, the amazing things that he does, and the power that he has. It's cool to watch him exercise those powers. He can just get rid of people, and kill them instantly, and I'm like, that'd be a dangerous power to have, wouldn't it? Anyway, to kind of sort of wrap this up, Heinlein is actually a really cool guy from the perspective that he was one of the founders of like real popular science fiction. And there's also this really cool caveat in it that he was like king hippie. Like these ideas, these Martian kind of thou art God, it's almost a communistic community he creates. This caught on like wildfire in the 60s. So you're not only getting a kind of a full science fiction book, albeit a quirky one and at times a frustrating one, you get a science fiction book that actually has a lot of really legit history to it. It's a pretty fun read. Also, on the point that it's masterfully written in the fact that it contributed some things to the English language, mainly Valentine Michael Smith's Martian word for complete and utter cognition of a concept as something you understand it so fully that you are immersed in it, it becomes a part of you. And that word is grok. I grok it. I fail to grok it. I grok completely. I think it's actually something I'm going to use a little bit now that I've read it, because the way the word actually integrates into the novel, it's really, really cool. And you see the word kind of as like an infection that more and more people start saying it. And it's cool to kind of see like the linguistic aspect of it, that more and more Martian concepts and words start to get ingrained. So it's a smart person science fiction novel. There's no pew 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 pew. There's no force. It's really, really thought heavy, and it participates in a really cool philosophical tradition. Um, Me personally, one last factoid before I wrap this up. Jubal Hardshaw is a character. He's an attorney, and he's this kind of curmudgeon, old, kind of rich playboy writer that he's okay. I didn't like him much at first. I liked him more and more as the book went on. And I have a little bit of a prayer, a hope, that one day a really good Stranger in a Strange Land movie will come out. It'll be rated R, trust me. But Jubal Hardshaw, I really want Jeff Bridges to play him, because Jeff Bridges would be an amazing Jubal Hardshaw. He really would. Like it would work perfectly. So, um, read the book, do a comment, do a discussion. It's fun. It's great stuff. And if you get the chance, if you're feeling like hurting yourself intellectually, get some Feuerbach and some communism up in there, because it really adds to the whole experience of the book. That's my review of Stranger in a Strange Land. Next week, I do promise a Stephen King book. I don't know if it's going to be Tommyknockers. I'm actually teaching Tommyknockers in my American Lit class right now, The Roots of American Horror. So I'm kind of sick of it, so I might do a different one. So stay tuned. I'm having a blast. Ah! Hold on while I press the stop button.